Thank you. I'll marry you when I'm rich.
Makina's hands were shaking when she whispered it. Thank you. I'll marry you when I'm rich. The billionaire laughed. Not loud. Not cruel. Just soft and broken. Like he pitied her. Because the girl standing in front of him was a black maid in a stained uniform holding a plastic food container she'd been about to eat from in the janitor's closet. And he had just handed her a $100 bill for lunch. He thought she was joking. She wasn't. Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She wasn't talking about the future either. She was talking about a promise she had already made to him once before, 14 years ago, when he was the poor one, when she was the one who saved his life. Elijah Rowan smiled at her like she was sweet, innocent, maybe a little desperate. You don't even know my name, he said. I know your face, Makina replied quietly. That's enough. He tilted his head, confused but amused. Then he reached into his wallet and pulled out his black credit card, the kind people like her only saw in movies. Go eat something real, he said, holding it out. Their fingers touched. Makina's chest almost split open. Because the last time their hands touched, he was 14 years old and bleeding inside. And she was 17, handing him the only food she had in the world, telling him a lie that would save his life, making him a promise he forgot. She stared at him now, standing in his tailored suit, smelling like expensive cologne, looking at her like she was nobody. He didn't remember her, not her voice, not her name, not her face. He had no idea she was the girl who gave him blood when the hospital said he'd die without it. The girl who sat beside his hospital bed all night while he cried. The girl who watched social services drag him away the next morning and never saw him again. Until now, 14 years later, in a luxury building in downtown Atlanta where she scrubbed toilets, and he owned the penthouse. Elijah pulled his hand back, still smiling. Seriously, go eat. You look exhausted. Makina forced herself to nod. She took the card with trembling fingers and watched him walk toward the elevator. He stopped, turned back. What's your name? He asked. Her throat closed. Makina, she whispered. He repeated it softly, like he was trying it out. Then he smiled again and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. Makina stood there alone in the hallway, clutching his credit card, tears burning behind her eyes. Because 14 years ago, when Elijah was homeless and starving on a street corner, she sat beside him and said the same thing. I'll marry you when I'm rich. And he looked her dead in the eyes, shook her hand and said, I promise. She believed him. Now he didn't even know her name. Some people give everything to a stranger and get nothing back. Not even a memory. If that's ever been you, even once, you know exactly how this feels. Makina slipped his card into her pocket and wiped her face. She wasn't going to tell him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because if he found out the truth, if he found out she was the girl who saved his life, the girl he made that promise to, the girl whose blood still ran through his veins, everything between them would explode. And she couldn't risk that. Not when she was already falling in love with him all over again. But here's the real question. Why did Makina lie to save him 14 years ago? And what secret is she still hiding now? 14 years ago, Makina slept on a thin mattress behind a closed-down laundromat in South Atlanta. She was 17 years old. Her mother had died 2 months before. Cancer. No insurance, no funeral. Just a body bag and a bill Makina couldn't pay. Her father had vanished when she was 9. No call, no letter, just gone. Now it was just her and Cairo, her little brother. 11 years old and sick with asthma so bad he coughed blood at night. Makina worked 2 jobs, nights cleaning offices downtown, Days washing dishes at a diner on the corner of Martin Luther King Boulevard. She skipped meals so Cairo could eat. She wore the same clothes for weeks because laundry cost money they didn't have. The landlord had locked them out that morning, changed the locks, threw their stuff on the curb. McKenna begged him, cried, offered to clean his building for free. He laughed in her face, so she took what she could carry, grabbed Cairo's hand and walked until her feet bled. They slept behind the laundromat because it had a back door that didn't lock and a wall that blocked the wind. Cairo cried himself to sleep that night. McKenna didn't cry. She couldn't. If she started, she'd never stop. One night after her shift at the diner, she walked past a grocery store that had just closed. The lights were off. The parking lot was empty except for one person. A boy. White. Skinny. Shaking. He sat on the curb with his head in his hands, wearing a hoodie 3 sizes too big and shoes with holes in the soles. McKenna almost kept walking. She had her own problems, her own pain, her own brother to feed, but something in the way he sat there, bent over like the world had crushed him, made her stop. How many times do we walk past people like that and say nothing? Do nothing? Just keep moving because their pain isn't ours to carry. You okay? McKenna asked quietly. The boy looked up. His eyes were red and swollen. His lips were cracked. His face was pale like he hadn't eaten in days. I just need $10, he whispered. I haven't eaten all day. McKenna opened her bag. Inside was one plastic container. Rice and chicken, her dinner, her only meal until tomorrow night. Her stomach was already growling. She stared at the container for a long moment. Cairo had eaten earlier. He was safe. He was fed. This boy looked like he was about to collapse. McKenna sat down beside him on the curb and handed the container over. Eat, she said. You look like you're about to fall over. The boy stared at the food like it wasn't real, like it might disappear if he blinked. You don't have to do this, he said, his voice breaking. I do, McKenna replied. He opened the container slowly. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He ate slow, careful, like he didn't trust it to stay. McKenna watched him and felt something crack open in her chest. She didn't know why. She didn't know him. But sitting there on that curb, watching a stranger eat the only food she had, she felt less alone than she had in months. When he finished, he looked at her with tears in his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. What's your name? McKenna asked. Elijah. I'm McKenna. They sat there in silence for a while. The streetlights flickered. Cars passed. The world kept moving like nothing had changed. But something had. McKenna didn't know it yet, but the boy sitting beside her would become the most important person in her life, and the most dangerous, because 14 years later he wouldn't remember her face, wouldn't remember her name, wouldn't remember the girl who saved his life, but she would remember everything. So here's the question. Who is this boy really? And why does McKenna feel like her life just changed forever? Elijah came back the next night. McKenna didn't expect him to, but there he was, sitting on the same curb outside the grocery store, waiting. When he saw her walking toward him after her shift, he stood up fast, like he'd been afraid she wouldn't come. I didn't know if you'd be here, he said quietly. I work nearby, McKenna replied. I'm here every night. He smiled, small, hopeful, like he'd just been given something he didn't deserve. She sat down beside him and pulled out another container from her bag. Rice again. A little chicken. Not much. But it was hers, and she gave it to him anyway. He stared at it like it was the most valuable thing in the world. You don't have to keep doing this, Elijah said. I know, McKenna replied. But I'm going to. They met again the next night, and the night after that. For 2 whole weeks, McKenna brought him food, sat with him, listened to him talk about things she didn't fully understand but wanted to. He told her his mother had just died. Heart attack. No warning. She was the only family he had. His foster home kicked him out the day after the funeral. Said they couldn't afford to keep him anymore. He had nowhere to go. No relatives, no friends. Just the streets and the cold. McKenna didn't tell him she was homeless too. That she slept behind a laundromat with her little brother. That her landlord had thrown them out. That she was one missed paycheck away from losing everything. She didn't tell him because his pain was already too heavy, and she didn't want to add hers to it. Instead, she let him talk. Let him dream out loud. Let him believe the world might get better someday. "I'm going to be rich someday," Elijah said one night, his voice shaking with hope. "I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to buy a house, help kids like me. I won't forget the people who helped me." McKenna smiled softly. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe anyone could escape poverty with just hope and hard work. But she knew better. Still, she didn't say that. "Then you better marry me when you're rich," she said, half joking, half serious. Elijah's face turned serious. He looked at her like she'd just said something sacred. "I will," he said. "I promise." He held out his hand. McKenna stared at it for a moment. Then she took it. They shook hands right there on the curb, under the broken streetlight, with the smell of fried food and car exhaust in the air. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't the kind of promise people made in movies. But it felt real, and McKenna believed him. Because hungry boys don't make promises unless they mean them. Because people who have nothing left don't lie about the future. Because when you're that broken, hope is the only thing you can afford to give. She looked into his eyes and saw something that scared her. He meant it. He really meant it, and that terrified her more than anything else. Because promises like that don't survive the real world. They break, they fade, they get forgotten the moment life gets better. McKenna knew that, but she shook his hand anyway. She let herself believe, just for a moment, that maybe this boy would be different, that maybe he'd remember her, that maybe one day when he wasn't starving and desperate, he'd come back and keep his word. Elijah smiled at her, still holding her hand. "What's your full name?" he asked. "McKenna Collins." "I'm Elijah Rowan," he said, "and I'm going to remember you. I swear." McKenna's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt, but deep down she already knew the truth. People like them didn't get happy endings. People like them survived, that's all. And survival didn't leave room for promises. Still, she held his hand a little longer. Let herself pretend. Let herself hope. Because hope was free. And it was the only thing she had left to give. But what McKenna didn't know was that in just 3 days, everything would break. And the promise they made on that curb would turn into the biggest lie she'd ever tell. 3 nights later, Elijah collapsed. 1 second he was sitting on the curb talking about his plans to finish high school. The next second he was coughing so hard his whole body shook. Then blood came out of his mouth. McKenna screamed. Elijah grabbed his stomach and fell forward, his face hitting the concrete. His eyes rolled back. His body went limp. "No, no, no," McKenna whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. She shook him, slapped his face gently. "Elijah, wake up. Please, wake up." He didn't move. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. "My friend collapsed," she said, her voice breaking. "He's bleeding. Please hurry." The ambulance came fast. Sirens, lights, people rushing. They loaded Elijah onto a stretcher. McKenna climbed into the back of the ambulance without asking. She held his hand the whole ride, whispering things she didn't even remember later. "You're going to be okay. You have to be okay. You promised me. Remember? You promised." At the hospital, doctors rushed him into surgery. McKenna sat in the waiting room, covered in his blood, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. A nurse came out an hour later. Her face was tight, serious. We need blood. Now, she said. He's lost too much. We need a donor immediately or he's not going to make it. McKenna stood up so fast her vision blurred. I'll give it, she said. The nurse looked her up and down. How old are you? 18, McKenna lied without hesitation. She was 17, but she didn't care. They took her to a room, drew her blood, asked her to sign papers she didn't read, took tissue samples, did tests she didn't understand. McKenna signed everything. She would have signed her life away if it meant saving his. Hours passed. McKenna sat in the hallway, dizzy and weak, staring at the operating room doors. Finally, a doctor came out. He's stable, he said. You saved his life. McKenna's knees almost gave out. When they let her see him, Elijah was lying in a hospital bed, pale and weak, tubes running out of his arms. His eyes opened slowly when she sat down beside him. What happened? He whispered. McKenna forced herself to smile. You just passed out from hunger. You're fine now. That was the lie. The doctor had told her the truth in the hallway. Internal bleeding. His stomach lining had torn from malnutrition. He would have died without the transfusion. But McKenna didn't tell him that. She didn't tell him she gave him her blood. Didn't tell him the hospital had taken her tissue samples. Didn't tell him he owed her his life. Because she didn't want him to feel guilty. She wanted him to live free. Elijah held her hand, weakly. I thought I was going to die, he whispered. You didn't, McKenna said, her voice shaking. You're going to be fine. He closed his eyes. I'll come back for you. When I'm rich. I promise. McKenna kissed his forehead. I'll be waiting. She sat beside his bed all night, holding his hand, memorizing his face. Because the next morning a social worker came in and told her Elijah was being transferred out of state. A foster family in North Carolina had agreed to take him. He would leave in 2 hours. McKenna's chest collapsed. She watched him sleep one last time. Watched his chest rise and fall. Watched the boy she had saved breathe air he wouldn't have without her. Then she walked out of the hospital. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't leave her number. She didn't tell him the truth. Because some people save lives and disappear. They don't wait for thank yous. They don't ask for credit. They just give everything they have and walk away in silence. McKenna was one of those people. And 14 years later, when Elijah stood in front of her as a billionaire and didn't recognize her face, she would realize the cost of that silence. But here's what McKenna didn't know. The lie she told to protect him would one day destroy everything between them. McKenna didn't go home after the hospital. She sat outside on a bench until sunrise, shaking so hard she thought she'd break apart. The doctor's words kept echoing in her head. Internal bleeding. He would have died without that transfusion. You saved his life. Her blood, her tissue, her lie. She never told Elijah he almost died. Never told him she saved his life. Never told him he owed her anything, because she thought he deserved a clean start. A life without debt. A future without guilt. But sitting there on that bench, dizzy and weak from giving blood, McKenna realized something that would haunt her for the next 14 years. She had given him everything, and he would never know. Social services took Elijah that morning. No goodbye, no phone number, no way to contact him. He was just gone. McKenna went back to her broken life, back to the laundromat, back to her little brother who was coughing blood every night, back to jobs that paid nothing and days that felt like slow death. Her brother's asthma got worse. The medical bills piled up so high McKenna couldn't see over them. She dropped out of community college after 1 semester because she couldn't afford books and rent at the same time. She worked hotels, scrubbed floors, cleaned toilets, washed sheets stained with things she didn't want to think about. Then she worked private houses, rich people's homes, mansions with more bathrooms than she had years of education. Then she worked luxury apartments, high rises, buildings so tall she got dizzy looking up at them. She told herself Elijah was just a moment, a memory. a boy she helped once and would never see again. But she never forgot his face, never forgot his promise, never forgot the blood she gave him. Years passed. Cairo got sicker. McKenna got older. Her hands got rough. Her back started hurting. Her dreams got smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. At 28, McKenna became a maid at Meridian Towers, the most expensive building in downtown Atlanta, the kind of place where people paid more for 1 month's rent than she made in a year. She cleaned penthouse apartments, scrubbed marble floors, polished windows so high she could see the whole city. And that's where she saw him again. Elijah Rowan, the boy she saved, the boy who promised to marry her when he got rich, except he wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man. Tall, confident, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her car, and he lived in the penthouse, the one she cleaned every Tuesday and Friday. McKenna saw his name on the mailbox first, Elijah Rowan, penthouse 4502. Her chest stopped. She told herself it couldn't be the same person. It had to be a coincidence, a different Elijah, a Tabio, different life. But when she walked into his apartment for the first time and saw a framed photo on his desk, she knew. It was him. Older. Richer. Successful beyond anything he could have imagined back then. And he had no idea the woman cleaning his floors was the girl who saved his life. McKenna stood in his apartment, holding a mop, staring at that photo, and felt something break inside her. He had made it. He had kept his promise to himself. He had become rich, but he had forgotten her. Over the next few weeks, McKenna cleaned his apartment in silence. She saw pieces of his life scattered everywhere. Business awards, expensive watches, invitations to charity galas. He was living the dream he talked about on that curb 14 years ago, and she was still scrubbing floors. One day, Elijah came home early while she was cleaning. He smiled at her. Polite, distant. "You're doing a great job," he said. "Thank you." McKenna nodded, her throat tight. He didn't recognize her. Not her face. Not her voice. Not the girl who sat with him every night for 2 weeks. Not the girl who gave him her only food. Not the girl who saved his life. She was invisible to him. Just another maid in a uniform, and that hurt more than she ever thought it would. But what McKenna didn't know was that in just a few days, Elijah would start talking to her. And when he did, everything she'd been hiding for 14 years would start unraveling. Elijah started leaving her notes, small ones at first. "Thank you for keeping everything so clean." Then longer ones. "I noticed you reorganized my books. I love it." Then one day, he waited for her. McKenna walked into his penthouse on a Tuesday morning and found him sitting on the couch, coffee in hand, still in his pajamas. "I wanted to catch you before you left," he said, smiling. "I feel like I never get to say thank you in person." McKenna's heart stopped. "You don't have to thank me," she said quietly. "It's my job." "Still," Elijah said, "you do it well. Better than anyone else?" He stood up and walked toward her. McKenna held her breath. "Do you want some coffee?" he asked. She should have said no, should have kept her distance, should have stayed invisible, but she said yes. They sat at his kitchen counter and talked, about nothing at first, the weather, the building, the traffic downtown. Then Elijah started talking about his past. "I wasn't always like this," he said, gesturing around the penthouse. "I was homeless once, for a while actually." McKenna's chest tightened. "I didn't know that," she lied. Elijah nodded, staring into his coffee. "Yeah, my mom died when I was 14. Foster care didn't work out. I ended up on the streets for a few months." McKenna gripped her cup so hard her knuckles turned white. "But someone helped me," Elijah continued. "A girl. I don't even know how old she was. Maybe 17, 18. She gave me food every night for 2 weeks, just sat with me, talked to me, made me feel like I wasn't invisible. Makina felt tears burning behind her eyes. She sounds like a good person, she whispered. She was, Elijah said, his voice soft. She saved my life. I don't mean that as a figure of speech. I literally would have died without her. Makina's hands started shaking. Do you still talk to her? She asked. Elijah's face fell. No, he said. I never found her again. Makina stared at him. Why not? He laughed once, a hollow sound. Because I forgot her name. Those 5 words shattered Makina's chest. She felt her throat close, felt her vision blur, felt everything she'd been holding inside for 14 years crack open. He forgot her name. He remembered her kindness, remembered her face maybe, remembered what she did for him, but he forgot her name. Makina forced herself to smile. I'm sure she understood. Life gets busy. Elijah shook his head. That's no excuse. She gave me everything when she had nothing, and I couldn't even remember her name long enough to find her again. He looked at Makina with genuine pain in his eyes. Do you believe in fate? He asked. Makina's voice broke. Sometimes. I do, Elijah said. I think people come into your life for a reason, and I think the people who save you never really leave, even if you can't see them anymore. Makina wanted to scream, wanted to grab his shoulders and shake him, wanted to tell him she was right in front of him, that she was the girl, that she never left. But she didn't. Because if he found out now, everything would change. He'd feel guilty, obligated. He'd see her differently. And she didn't want his guilt. She wanted him to see her for who she was now, not who she used to be. So Makina smiled through the heartbreak and said, I hope you find her someday. Elijah smiled back. Me too. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Elijah checked his watch and stood up. I have a meeting, he said, but thank you for the coffee and the conversation. It's been a long time since I talked to someone about that. Makina nodded, unable to speak. As Elijah walked toward the door, he stopped and turned back. What's your name again? He asked. Makina's breath caught. Makina, she said. Elijah repeated it slowly. Makina. That's beautiful. Then he left, and Makina sat there alone in his penthouse, tears streaming down her face, realizing the cruelest truth of all. He didn't recognize her. Not her name, not her face, not her voice. She had given him her blood, her food, her time, her hope, and he had forgotten all of it. Have you ever given everything to someone and watched them forget you existed? That's the kind of pain that doesn't go away. It just sits inside you, heavy and silent, for the rest of your life. But what Makina didn't know was that in just a few weeks, Elijah would start falling in love with her all over again. And when he did, the lie she'd been hiding would become impossible to keep. They fell in love fast, too fast. Makina tried to stop it, tried to keep her distance, tried to remind herself that loving him was dangerous. She failed. Elijah started waiting for her every Tuesday and Friday, started making coffee for both of them, started asking about her life. Do you have family? He asked one morning. Makina hesitated. A brother. Cairo. He's sick. Elijah's face softened. What's wrong with him? Asthma. Bad asthma. He's been in and out of the hospital since he was a kid. That must be hard, Elijah said quietly. Makina nodded, staring into her coffee. It is. 2 weeks later, Makina got a call from the hospital. Your brother's bills have been paid in full, the woman on the phone said. Someone covered everything. The surgeries, the medications, the follow-up appointments, all of it. Makina's hands started shaking. Who? The payment was anonymous. Makina knew. She confronted Elijah the next time she saw him. You paid Cairo's hospital bills, she said, her voice breaking. Elijah didn't deny it. You shouldn't have to choose between keeping your job and saving your brother. McKenna's chest collapsed. You don't even know me. I know enough, Elijah said. He stepped closer. Close enough that McKenna could smell his cologne. Close enough that she could see the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. I know you work 2 jobs, he said. I know you skip meals. I know you're carrying weight you shouldn't have to carry alone. McKenna's throat closed. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Elijah smiled softly. Because someone did it for me once, and I never got to thank her. McKenna almost broke right there. She almost told him everything. Almost said, that was me. I'm the girl. I saved your life. I gave you my blood. I sat with you every night. I made you that promise. But she didn't, because if she told him now, everything would change. He'd feel obligated, guilty. He'd see her as someone he owed instead of someone he chose. So McKenna swallowed the truth and said, thank you. Over the next few weeks, they spent more time together, talked more, laughed more. Elijah held her hand one night while they sat on his balcony looking out over the city. Do you believe in fate? He asked again. McKenna looked at him. You asked me that before. I know, Elijah said, but I want to hear your real answer this time. McKenna was quiet for a long moment. I do, she said finally. But fate hurts sometimes. Elijah frowned. What do you mean? McKenna stared out at the lights. Sometimes fate brings people together just to remind them of what they lost, or what they can never have. Elijah squeezed her hand. Or maybe fate brings people together because they were always supposed to find each other again. McKenna's chest hurt. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe fate was kind. That love could survive lies. That truth didn't always destroy everything. But she knew better. One night, lying beside him in his bed, McKenna whispered, I made a promise once, too. Elijah turned to face her. To who? To a boy who said he'd marry me when he got rich. Elijah laughed softly, his breath warm against her skin. I guess I beat him to it? McKenna's heart shattered, because he didn't know. He had no idea he was the boy. You don't believe in fate? He asked, pulling her closer. I do, McKenna said, her voice breaking. But fate hurts sometimes. Elijah kissed her forehead. Not this time. McKenna cried in the bathroom that night after he fell asleep. She cried because she loved him. Because he loved her. Because the truth was a bomb waiting to explode. And because she knew deep down that when it finally came out, it would destroy everything. She stared at herself in the mirror, tears streaming down her face, and whispered the words she couldn't say out loud. I'm the girl you forgot. I'm the one who saved you. And you're falling in love with me all over again without even knowing it. But the worst part wasn't that he didn't remember. The worst part was that McKenna couldn't tell him, because if she did, she'd lose him forever. But fate doesn't let secrets stay buried, and in just a few days the truth would start clawing its way to the surface in the worst possible way. Cairo collapsed at school. The call came while McKenna was cleaning Elijah's apartment. Your brother's been rushed to the emergency room, the voice said. You need to come now. McKenna dropped everything and ran. She didn't tell Elijah, didn't call him, didn't think about anything except getting to the hospital. When she got there, doctors were already wheeling Cairo into surgery. What happened? McKenna screamed. His lungs, a doctor said quickly. They're failing. We need to operate immediately. McKenna grabbed the doctor's arm. Is he going to be okay? The doctor didn't answer. McKenna sat in the waiting room shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Hours passed. People came and went. She sat alone, praying to a God she wasn't sure was listening. Then Elijah walked in. McKenna looked up, shocked. How did you know I was here? You left your phone at my place, Elijah said, sitting beside her. I saw the missed calls. I came as fast as I could. McKenna started crying. Elijah wrapped his arms around her and held her while she broke apart. "He's all I have," McKenna whispered. "If he dies, I have nothing." "He's not going to die," Elijah said firmly. "I won't let him." True to his word, Elijah paid for everything. The surgery, the medication, the private room. He didn't ask permission, didn't wait for approval, he just did it. And McKenna loved him even more for it. While McKenna was signing post-surgery paperwork, a nurse approached her. "McKenna Collins?" the nurse asked. "Yes." The nurse glanced at her clipboard. "We need to ask you about someone. Elijah Rowan. You're listed as his emergency contact in our system." McKenna froze. "What?" she whispered. The nurse looked confused. "Yes. From 14 years ago. There's a note here that you were involved in an emergency transfusion." McKenna's heart stopped. Some secrets are meant to protect people, but other secrets grow so big they start destroying everything around them. "Which kind are you holding right now?" the nurse continued, flipping through pages. "We're updating our donor records and your name came up. Elijah Rowan was admitted here 14 years ago with internal bleeding. Someone donated blood and tissue anonymously. It saved his life." McKenna couldn't breathe. The nurse looked up. "According to our records, that donor was you." The room tilted. McKenna grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. "Are you okay?" the nurse asked. McKenna shook her head. "I need to sit down." The nurse guided her to a chair. "I didn't mean to upset you. I just needed to confirm the records." McKenna stared at the floor, her mind racing. 14 years. She had kept this secret for 14 years. And now it was cracking open in a hospital hallway while the man she loved was sitting 20 feet away, waiting for her. "Does he know?" McKenna whispered. "Know what?" the nurse asked. "Does Elijah know I'm the donor?" The nurse checked her clipboard again. The donation was anonymous at the time, but the records are being matched now for a database update. If he requests his file, he'll see your name. McKenna felt sick. The lie she told to protect him. The secret she carried to give him freedom. The blood she gave to save his life. It was all about to come out, and she had no control over how or when. McKenna stood up, her legs shaking. "Don't tell him. Please. Not yet." The nurse frowned. "I'm not authorized to disclose patient information without consent. But if he asks, I can't lie to him." McKenna nodded, her vision blurring. She walked back to the waiting room where Elijah was sitting, scrolling through his phone. He looked up and smiled. "Everything okay?" McKenna forced herself to nod. "Yeah, just paperwork." Elijah stood and pulled her into his arms. "Cairo's going to be fine. The doctor just came out. The surgery went well." McKenna buried her face in his chest and cried. Not because Cairo was okay, but because the truth was coming. And when it did, everything between them would explode. But what McKenna didn't know was that in less than 24 hours she'd have to make the hardest choice of her life. Tell Elijah the truth herself, or let him find out another way. McKenna told him everything that night. They were back at his penthouse. Cairo was stable, the hospital was quiet, and McKenna couldn't carry the lie anymore. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. Elijah looked up from his laptop. "What's wrong?" McKenna sat down across from him, her hands trembling in her lap. 14 years ago, she started, you were homeless, starving, sitting on a curb outside a grocery store. Elijah's face went pale. "A girl gave you food every night for 2 weeks," McKenna continued. "She sat with you, talked to you, made you feel like you weren't invisible." Elijah stood up slowly. "How do you know that?" McKenna's voice broke. "Because I was that girl." The room went silent. Elijah stared at her like she'd just spoken a language he didn't understand. "What?" he whispered. "It was me," McKenna said, tears streaming down her face. I'm the girl who fed you. I'm the girl who sat with you every night. I'm the girl you made that promise to. Elijah's hands started shaking. You're lying. I'm not, McKenna said. You told me you were going to be rich someday. You told me you'd help kids like you. You told me you wouldn't forget me. Elijah took a step back. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to feel guilty, McKenna said. I didn't want you to love me out of obligation. Elijah's face twisted with anger. So you lied to me instead? I didn't lie, McKenna said desperately. I just didn't tell you. That's the same thing, Elijah shouted. McKenna flinched. Elijah ran his hands through his hair, pacing the room like a caged animal. You saved my life, he said, his voice breaking. You gave me your blood. You sat with me in that hospital. And you never told me? I wanted to, McKenna whispered, but I was scared. Of what? Elijah demanded. Of this, McKenna said, gesturing between them. Of you looking at me the way you're looking at me right now. Elijah stopped pacing. His eyes were red. His jaw was tight. You let me fall in love with you, he said slowly. Without telling me I owe you my life? McKenna stood up. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do, Elijah shouted. I owe you everything. My life, my career, my future. All of it exists because of you. I didn't want your guilt, McKenna said, her voice breaking. I wanted your heart. Elijah laughed once. A harsh, bitter sound. How am I supposed to know the difference now? He said. How am I supposed to know if I love you because of who you are or because of what you did for me? McKenna felt her chest collapse. You know the difference, she whispered. Elijah shook his head. I don't. And that's the problem. He grabbed his jacket and walked toward the door. Where are you going? McKenna asked, panic rising in her throat. I need to think, Elijah said without looking back. Please don't leave, McKenna begged. We can talk about this. Elijah stopped at the door. I can't look at you right now. Then he left. The door slammed shut behind him. McKenna stood there alone in his penthouse, tears streaming down her face, her whole world falling apart. She waited for him to call, to text, to come back. He didn't. 1 day passed, then 2, then 3. No calls, no messages, nothing. McKenna went to work, cleaned his apartment, left notes he never responded to. On the 3rd day, she packed her things, quit her job, decided to leave the city, because loving someone who couldn't forgive you was worse than never loving them at all. She was done. Have you ever given everything to someone, sacrificed your truth to protect them, and still lost them anyway? That's the kind of pain that stays with you forever. But what McKenna didn't know was that on the 4th day, Elijah would show up at the one place she never expected, and what he'd say would change everything again. McKenna stood at the bus station with one bag. Her phone was dead. Her heart was broken. Her future was a question mark. The bus to Charlotte was leaving in 10 minutes. She'd start over there, find a new job, a new apartment, a new life where Elijah Rowan didn't exist. She stared at the departure board through blurred vision, trying to convince herself this was the right choice. Then she heard a voice behind her. McKenna. She froze. Every muscle in her body locked, her breath caught. Her heart stopped. She turned slowly. Elijah stood there, 10 feet away, out of breath, eyes red, looking like he'd been running. What are you doing here? McKenna whispered. I remembered, Elijah said, his voice shaking. McKenna's chest tightened. Remembered what? Everything, Elijah said, stepping closer. The promise. The handshake. The girl who said, marry me when you're rich. McKenna's knees almost gave out. You remembered me? She whispered. I never forgot your face, Elijah said, his voice breaking. I just forgot your name, and I forgot what you did for me. But I remembered the feeling, the way you made me feel seen when the whole world looked past me. Tears streamed down McKenna's face. Elijah walked closer until he was standing right in front of her. "I don't love you because you saved my life," he said quietly. "I love you because you gave me one. There's a difference." McKenna covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing. "I'm sorry I walked out," Elijah continued. "I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to hide who you were. I'm sorry I didn't see you sooner." He knelt down in front of her, right there in the middle of the bus station. People stared. Phones came out. But Elijah didn't care. "Don't leave," he said. "Please. I don't care about the past. I don't care about the lie. I care about you, right now, the woman standing in front of me." McKenna's whole body shook. "I thought you hated me," she whispered. "I could never hate you," Elijah said. "I was just scared. Scared that I didn't deserve you. Scared that everything I built was because of you and not because of me." "That's not true," McKenna said. "I know that now," Elijah replied. "You didn't build my company. You didn't make my decisions. You didn't create my success. You just gave me a chance to live long enough to do it myself." McKenna started crying harder. Elijah stood up and pulled her into his arms. "I love you," he whispered into her hair, "and I'm not letting you go." McKenna buried her face in his chest and cried. Cried for the girl she used to be. Cried for the boy he used to be. Cried for all the years they lost and all the pain they carried. But before she could say anything back, Elijah's phone rang. He pulled it out of his pocket, frowning at the screen. "It's my lawyer," he said. "I need to take this." McKenna nodded, wiping her face. Elijah answered. "Yeah?" His face changed immediately. The color drained from his skin. His jaw tightened. His eyes went wide. "Say that again," he said slowly. McKenna's chest tightened. Elijah listened for another moment, then hung up without saying goodbye. He stared at his phone like it had just exploded in his hand. "What's wrong?" McKenna asked. Elijah looked up at her, his face pale. "There's a woman claiming she donated blood to me 14 years ago," he said. "She's suing me for a share of my company." McKenna's heart stopped. "What?" she whispered. "She says I owe her my life," Elijah continued, his voice tight. "She says I promised her everything. And she has proof." McKenna felt dizzy. "That's impossible," she said. "I'm the only person who could have known that story." Elijah stared at her, his eyes searching hers. "You're the only person who should have known," he said slowly. "But somehow, someone else does." McKenna's hands started shaking. Someone had stolen her secret, and now they were using it to destroy the man she loved. Who is this woman? How does she know McKenna's lie? And why is she coming for Elijah now, right when they finally found each other again? Elijah's phone rang again. He stared at it like it was a grenade about to explode. "Answer it," McKenna said, her voice tight. Elijah put the phone on speaker. "Mr. Rowan," his lawyer's voice came through, sharp and tense. "We need to meet immediately. This woman has documents, hospital records, blood match results. She's claiming she's the anonymous donor from 14 years ago." McKenna's chest collapsed. "What's her name?" Elijah asked. "Trina Brooks," the lawyer said. "She says you owe her compensation for saving your life. She's demanding 20% of your company or she goes public." Elijah's jaw clenched. "That's impossible. The donor was anonymous." "She has proof," the lawyer said. "Signed consent forms, tissue sample records, everything matches your file from that night." McKenna grabbed Elijah's arm. "That's my file. Those are my records." Elijah looked at her, his face pale. "How would she get your records?" "I don't know," McKenna whispered, panic rising in her throat. The lawyer continued. "She's threatening to go to the media tomorrow if you don't meet with her today." This could destroy your reputation, Mr. Rowan. People will think you've been hiding a debt for years." Elijah hung up without responding. He turned to McKenna. "How is this possible?" McKenna's mind raced. Someone at the hospital. Someone who had access to donor records. Someone who knew what those records were worth. "But why now?" Elijah demanded. "Why after 14 years?" "Because you're rich now," McKenna said quietly. "Because now, it's worth something." Elijah ran his hands through his hair, pacing. "This doesn't make sense. You're the donor. You have proof. We can fight. This." McKenna shook her head. "I was 17 when I donated. I lied about my age. I signed papers I didn't read. I don't even know what I agreed to." Elijah stopped pacing. "You're saying she could win?" "I'm saying she could make this ugly," McKenna replied. "Even if she doesn't win, the lawsuit alone could destroy you." Elijah's phone buzzed again, a text from his lawyer. "She wants to meet tonight, 8 p.m. downtown." Elijah looked at McKenna. "I'm not going alone. I'm coming with you," McKenna said immediately. "No," Elijah said. "If she sees you, she'll know you're the real donor. It'll get worse." McKenna grabbed his hand. "I don't care. Someone stole my secret. Someone is using my sacrifice to hurt you. I'm not hiding anymore." Elijah stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. They drove to the meeting in silence. McKenna's hands shook the whole way. When they arrived at the office building, Elijah's lawyer was waiting outside. "This is bad," the lawyer said immediately. "She has everything: hospital records, blood type, tissue match, signed documents with a name on them." "Whose name?" McKenna asked. The lawyer looked at her, confused. "McKenna Collins." McKenna felt the ground tilt beneath her. "That's me," she whispered. The lawyer's eyes went wide. "You're the donor?" "Yes," McKenna said, "but I never gave anyone permission to use my records. I never agreed to anything like this." The lawyer's face tightened. "Then how does this woman have your file?" "That's what we're about to find out," Elijah said. They walked inside. The conference room was cold. Glass walls, leather chairs, a long table in the middle. And sitting at the head of that table was a woman McKenna had never seen before in her life. She was older, maybe 40. Blonde hair pulled back tight, designer suit, cold eyes. She smiled when they walked in. "Mr. Rowan," she said smoothly. "Thank you for coming." Elijah didn't sit down. "Who are you?" "Trina Brooks," the woman said. "The person who saved your life 14 years ago." McKenna stepped forward. "You're lying." Trina's smile widened. "Am I?" She slid a folder across the table. Elijah opened it. Inside were hospital records, blood match results, consent forms, all with McKenna's name on them, all with McKenna's signature. How many people out there are stealing someone else's pain, someone else's sacrifice, and turning it into profit? And how many of them are getting away with it? McKenna stared at the documents, her heart pounding. "How did you get these?" she whispered. Trina leaned back in her chair, smiling like she'd already won. "Does it matter?" she said. Elijah slammed the folder shut. "Yes, it does." Trina's smile faded slightly. "I worked at that hospital 14 years ago. I had access to donor records. I knew what they were worth. So I kept a copy." McKenna felt sick. "You stole my file." "I preserved it," Trina corrected. "And now I'm using it the way it should have been used from the beginning." Elijah's voice went cold. "What do you want?" Trina's smile returned. 20% of your company. Or I go to the media tomorrow and tell them you've been hiding this debt for years." McKenna's chest tightened. "You can't do this," she said. Trina looked at her like she was nothing. "Watch me." But what McKenna and Elijah don't know yet is that Trina isn't just stealing McKenna's secret. She's hiding one of her own, and when it comes out, everything will explode. Trina spread the documents across the table like playing cards. "Let me walk you through this," she said, her voice smooth and cold. McKenna stared at the papers, her hands shaking. Hospital admission forms, blood type records, consent signatures, tissue sample results. All of them had her name, McKenna Collins. All of them had her signature, a signature she barely remembered writing because she was 17, terrified, and lying about her age to save a stranger's life. "How did you get these?" Elijah demanded. Trina smiled. "I told you. I worked at that hospital, records clerk, night shift. I saw everything that came through." She tapped one of the documents with a perfectly manicured nail. "When I saw this case, I knew it was special," she continued. "Homeless teenager. Emergency transfusion. Anonymous donor. No family, no insurance. The kind of case that disappears into the system and never gets followed up on." McKenna's voice shook. "So you stole my file." "I preserved it," Trina corrected, her smile never fading. "I made copies before the originals got buried in some archive no one would ever look at again." Elijah's lawyer leaned forward. "Why? What did you think you were going to do with them?" Trina leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs. "I didn't know at the time, but I had a feeling they'd be valuable someday. And I was right." She looked directly at Elijah. "You became a billionaire," she said, "and now those records are worth exactly what I thought they'd be worth. 20% of everything you own." Elijah slammed his hand on the table. "You can't extort me with stolen documents." "They're not stolen," Trina said calmly. "They're copies, legal copies, and the information in them is true. DNA doesn't lie, Mr. Rowan." She pulled out another document and slid it toward him. "This is a blood match analysis," she said. "Comparing your blood type from that night to the donor records. It's a perfect match, and the donor name on file is McKenna Collins." McKenna felt dizzy. "You're using my name," she whispered. "But you're not me." Trina tilted her head. "Can you prove that?" "I was there," McKenna said, her voice rising. "I gave the blood. I signed those papers. I saved his life." Trina smiled wider. "Then where's your proof?" McKenna froze. She didn't have proof. She didn't keep copies. She didn't take photos. She was 17 and scared and just trying to save a boy's life. She had nothing. Trina saw it on her face and laughed softly. "That's what I thought," she said. Elijah stood up. "This is fraud, blackmail, theft. We'll fight this in court and you'll lose." Trina didn't flinch. "Go ahead, fight it. But while you're fighting, I'll go to the media. I'll tell them you've been hiding a life debt for 14 years. I'll tell them you built your empire on someone else's sacrifice and never acknowledged it." She leaned forward, her eyes cold. "Your reputation will be destroyed before the first hearing even starts." Elijah's jaw clenched. McKenna grabbed his arm. "Don't listen to her. She's bluffing." Trina laughed. "Am I? Let's test it. Tomorrow morning I'll send this story to every major news outlet in Atlanta. By noon your face will be on every screen in the country, and by the end of the week your company's stock will tank." She stood up, smoothing her suit. "Or," she said, "you can sign over 20% tonight. Quietly. No media, no scandal, just business." Elijah stared at her, his hands shaking with rage. "You're a thief," he said quietly. Trina smiled. "I'm a businesswoman, just like you." She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "You have until midnight to decide," she said. "After that, the price goes up." Then she left. The room went silent. McKenna collapsed into a chair, her whole body trembling. "She's lying," she whispered. "She has to be lying." Elijah's lawyer shook his head. "Unfortunately, she's not. The documents are real. The signatures match. The blood types match. Legally, she has a case." Elijah turned to McKenna. Did you sign anything else that night? Anything that could have given her permission to use your name? McKenna's mind raced back 14 years. The hospital, the nurse, the papers she signed without reading. I don't know, she whispered. I was so scared. I just signed everything they put in front of me. Elijah's lawyer sighed. Then she might actually have legal grounds. McKenna looked up at Elijah, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, she said. This is all my fault. Elijah knelt in front of her. This isn't your fault. You saved my life. She's the one weaponizing it. But if I hadn't lied about my age, McKenna said, her voice breaking, if I hadn't signed those papers, she wouldn't have anything. Elijah grabbed her hands. If you hadn't done those things, I'd be dead. McKenna sobbed. Elijah pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. His lawyer cleared his throat. We need to decide what to do. Tonight. Elijah looked up, his eyes hard. We're not giving her anything. Then we need to find something on her, the lawyer said. Something that proves she's lying. Something that destroys her case before she destroys yours. Elijah nodded slowly. Find it, he said. But what they're about to discover about Trina Brooks will change everything. Because she's not just a thief. She's something much worse. They spent the next 3 hours in Elijah's lawyer's office, going through every document Trina had provided. McKenna watched Elijah's face change with each page he read. His jaw got tighter, his eyes got colder, his silence got heavier. Finally, he closed the last folder and looked at his lawyer. What are our options? He asked. The lawyer sighed. Legally, she has a strong case. The documents are real. The signatures match. The blood type matches. Without proof that you're the actual donor, McKenna, we can't prove she's lying. McKenna's chest tightened. I am the donor. I was there. I believe you, the lawyer said carefully. But belief doesn't hold up in court. We need evidence. Elijah stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the city below. What if we just pay her? He said quietly. McKenna's heart stopped. What? She whispered. Elijah didn't turn around. What if we give her the 20% and make this go away? McKenna stood up, her legs shaking. You can't be serious. I'm very serious, Elijah said, his voice flat. She has documents. She has proof. She has leverage. Fighting this could destroy everything I've built. But she's lying, McKenna said desperately. She stole my file. She's using my sacrifice to blackmail you. Elijah finally turned around. His eyes were cold. Empty. Are you sure about that? He asked. McKenna felt the floor drop out from under her. What are you saying? She whispered. Elijah crossed his arms. I'm saying maybe you're both telling the truth. McKenna's voice broke. What does that mean? Maybe you did donate blood, Elijah said slowly. But maybe she did too. Maybe there were multiple donors that night. Maybe you're not the only person who saved my life. McKenna's chest collapsed. You don't believe me, she whispered. Elijah didn't answer. McKenna stepped toward him. Elijah, look at me. I'm telling you the truth. I was the only donor. I gave you my blood. I sat with you all night. I watched them take you away. It was me. Elijah's face didn't change. Then why don't you have proof? Because I was 17, McKenna shouted. Because I was scared. Because I didn't think I'd need proof 14 years later. Elijah shook his head. Everyone wants something, McKenna. Those 4 words shattered her. What? She whispered. Everyone wants something, Elijah repeated coldly. Trina wants money. You want... What? Love? Security? A way out of poverty? McKenna felt like she'd been slapped. You think I'm lying to you? She said, her voice shaking. You think I made all of this up? I think you hid the truth for 14 years, Elijah said, And now that someone else is claiming it, you're scrambling to take it back. McKenna grabbed his arm. I hid it to protect you. I didn't want you to feel guilty. I didn't want you to owe me. Elijah pulled his arm away. That small movement broke McKenna's heart more than anything he'd said. If you didn't want me to owe you, Elijah said quietly, then why are you fighting so hard to prove it was you? McKenna's tears started falling. Because it's the truth, she whispered. Because I gave you everything I had. Because I loved you then, and I love you now, and I can't stand here and watch someone else take credit for saving your life. Elijah stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his lawyer. Draft the agreement. Give her the 20%. McKenna's knees almost gave out. No, she whispered. Please, don't do this. Elijah didn't look at her. It's done. Elijah, McKenna begged, her voice breaking. Please, just listen to me. Just believe me. He finally looked at her, and the coldness in his eyes destroyed her. I believed you once, he said, and you lied to me. Why should I believe you now? McKenna couldn't breathe. She stood there, tears streaming down her face, watching the man she loved choose a stranger's lie over her truth. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Rowan, maybe we should take some time to— No, Elijah interrupted. I've made my decision. Prepare the papers. McKenna backed toward the door, her whole body shaking. I can't believe you're doing this, she whispered. Elijah turned away from her. You should go. McKenna stood there for one more second, hoping he'd turn around, hoping he'd change his mind, hoping he'd see the truth in her eyes. He didn't. So she left. She walked out of that office, down the elevator, out into the cold night air, and she kept walking. Past the bus station. Past the laundromat where she used to sleep. Past the grocery store where she first met him. She walked until her feet hurt and her tears ran dry. Have you ever told the truth and been called a liar by the one person who should have believed you? That's the kind of betrayal that doesn't heal. It just lives inside you forever. But what McKenna doesn't know is that Elijah's lawyer just found something. Something about Trina Brooks that changes everything. And by tomorrow morning, Elijah is going to realize he just made the biggest mistake of his life. The story broke the next morning. McKenna woke up to her phone exploding with notifications, text messages, voicemails, emails, hundreds of them. She opened her phone with shaking hands and saw her face on every news site in Atlanta. Billionaire owes fortune to mystery blood donor. Elijah Rowan's hidden debt exposed. Former maid claims she saved Billionaire's life, then hid it to trap him. McKenna's chest stopped. The article had her photo, her full name, her address, her job. And the caption underneath read, McKenna Collins, 31, worked as a maid in Rowan's building while hiding the fact that she donated blood to save his life 14 years ago. Sources say she used the secret to manipulate her way into a relationship with the billionaire. McKenna felt sick. She scrolled through the comments. Gold digger. She planned this from the start. Using a good deed to trap a rich man. Disgusting. She should be ashamed. McKenna's hands shook so badly she dropped her phone. Within an hour, her landlord called. You need to leave, he said. The building doesn't want this kind of attention. You have until tonight. Then her job called. We're letting you go, her manager said coldly. Effective immediately. But I didn't do anything wrong, McKenna whispered. You became a liability, the manager replied. We can't have our employees in the news like this. The line went dead. McKenna sat on her bed, staring at the wall, her whole world collapsing around her. She tried calling Elijah. No answer. She tried texting him. No response. He was silent. While the world destroyed her, he said nothing. McKenna packed her things in a daze. One bag. Same as always. same as 14 years ago when her landlord threw her out the first time. History repeating itself. She walked to the bus station, head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. People stared, whispered, pointed. A woman walked past her and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's her, the gold digger." McKenna kept walking. At the bus station, she sat on a bench and stared at the departure board. Charlotte, Savannah, Birmingham. It didn't matter where she went. The story would follow her. The lies would follow her. The shame would follow her. She was 28 years old and her life was over. Again. "You look like you're running away." McKenna's blood turned cold. She looked up. Trina Brooks stood in front of her, smiling. Designer coat, expensive bag, perfect hair. Looking like she'd already won. "What do you want?" McKenna whispered. Trina sat down beside her without being invited. "I wanted to see how you were doing," she said sweetly. "The news has been brutal, hasn't it?" McKenna's hands clenched into fists. "You did this." "I did nothing," Trina said innocently. "I simply told the truth. Well, my version of it." "You're a liar," McKenna said, her voice shaking. "You stole my file. You stole my story. You're destroying my life." Trina tilted her head. "Am I? Or are you destroying your own life by refusing to let go?" McKenna turned to face her. "Why are you doing this?" Trina's smile faded. Her eyes went cold. "Because people like you don't get to win," she said quietly. McKenna frowned. "What?" Trina leaned closer. "You gave him blood. So what? You think that makes you special? You think that gives you the right to his life, his money, his future?" "I never wanted his money," McKenna said. "Liar," Trina hissed. "Everyone wants something. And you wanted him. The poor little maid who saved the billionaire's life and thought she deserved a fairy tale ending." McKenna's chest hurt. "You don't know anything about me," Trina laughed. "I know everything about you. I know you slept behind a laundromat. I know your mother died broke. I know your brother's been sick his whole life. I know you've been poor your entire existence." She stood up, looking down at McKenna with disgust. "And I know that no matter how much blood you gave him, you'll never be good enough for Elijah Rowan." McKenna felt tears burning behind her eyes. Trina smiled again. "Enjoy your bus ride. Wherever you're going, I hope it's far." She started to walk away. Then she stopped and turned back. "Oh, and one more thing," she said. "This isn't about money. It never was." McKenna looked up. "Then what's it about?" Trina's smile turned cruel. "Revenge." McKenna's breath caught. "Revenge for what?" But Trina didn't answer. She just walked away, leaving McKenna sitting alone on that bench, more confused and broken than she'd ever been. Revenge? Against who? And what does Trina's real plan have to do with destroying McKenna and Elijah? McKenna stood up from the bench. "Wait," she called out. Trina stopped but didn't turn around. "Revenge for what?" McKenna asked again, her voice stronger now. "What did I ever do to you?" Trina turned slowly, her face unreadable. "You really don't get it, do you?" she said. "Get what?" McKenna demanded. Trina walked back toward her, each step deliberate and cold. "I didn't steal your file for money," she said quietly. "I stole it because someone paid me to." McKenna's chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" Trina reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to McKenna. McKenna's hand shook as she unfolded it. It was a photo. Old, faded, but clear enough. A woman sitting at a table, blonde hair, expensive jewelry, cold eyes, signing a check. And standing across from her, younger but recognizable, was Trina. McKenna's voice broke. "Who is this?" "Elijah's mother," Trina said. McKenna felt the ground tilt beneath her. "What?" she whispered. Trina's smile was bitter now. "Victoria Rowan. She came to the hospital 2 days after Elijah's surgery. She wanted to know who donated the blood. Who saved her son? Makina couldn't breathe. I was the records clerk, Trina continued. I told her the donor was anonymous, a 17-year-old black girl who lied about her age to save a stranger. Makina's hand started shaking. Victoria didn't like that, Trina said. She didn't want her son tied to some poor homeless girl. She didn't want him feeling guilty. She didn't want him looking for you when he got older. Makina's voice was barely a whisper. So, what did she do? Trina's eyes went dark. She paid me $20,000 to erase you. Makina's knees almost gave out. She paid me to steal your file, Trina continued, to remove your name from the donor records, to make sure Elijah would never find you, never know who saved him, never owe you anything. Makina felt sick. How many mothers out there have destroyed their children's happiness because they thought they knew better? Because they wanted control? Because they couldn't stand the idea of their child choosing someone they didn't approve of? Trina stepped closer. I took the money. I was young, broke. $20,000 was more than I'd ever seen in my life. So I did it. I erased you from his records. I made you disappear. Makina's tears started falling. Why are you telling me this now? Trina's face twisted with anger. Because she never paid me the rest. Makina frowned. What? The $20,000 was just the first payment, Trina said. She promised me another $30,000 once Elijah graduated college. Once he was successful. Once he forgot about you completely. Her voice got louder. But she never paid me, Trina hissed. She cut me off, blocked my calls, threatened me when I tried to contact her. She used me and threw me away like I was nothing. Makina stared at her, horrified. So this isn't about me, Makina whispered. This is about her. This is about both of you, Trina said coldly. She took my future, and you got the life I helped her steal from you, so now I'm taking everything from both of you. Makina shook her head. I didn't get anything. I've been poor my whole life. I've been suffering for 14 years. And whose fault is that? Trina snapped. You could have fought for him. You could have told him the truth. But you didn't. You stayed silent. You let her win. Makina's chest hurt. I was protecting him. You were protecting yourself, Trina said. From rejection? From guilt? From the truth that maybe he wouldn't choose you even if he knew? Makina felt like she'd been slapped. Trina pulled out her phone and showed Makina a video. It was Victoria Rowan, older now, sitting in a luxury penthouse, laughing. She's still rich, Trina said, still powerful, still living her perfect life while people like us suffer. She put her phone away and looked Makina dead in the eyes. So I'm destroying her son, Trina said. I'm taking his company, his reputation, his love, everything she paid me to protect, and you're going to help me do it. Makina stepped back. No, I won't, Trina smiled. You already did. The moment you told Elijah the truth, you gave me everything I needed. Now he doesn't trust you. He doesn't trust her. He doesn't trust anyone. She leaned in close. And when he loses everything, I'll make sure Victoria knows it's because of what she did 14 years ago. Makina's voice shook. You're insane. I'm owed, Trina corrected, and I always collect. She turned and walked away, leaving Makina standing there with the photo still in her hands. Makina stared at it. Victoria Rowan. Elijah's mother. The woman who paid to erase her. The woman who destroyed her future before it even began. And now Makina has to decide. Does she tell Elijah the truth about his mother, or does she let Trina's revenge destroy them both? Makina stormed into Elijah's penthouse. Security tried to stop her. She pushed past them. She didn't care anymore, didn't care about being polite, didn't care about consequences. She had the truth in her hand, and she was going to make him see it. "Makina, you can't just—" The security guard started. "Get out of my way," she said, her voice cold. Elijah came out of his office, his face tight with anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Makina threw the photo at him. It landed on the floor, between them. "Your mother paid to erase me," she said, her voice shaking with rage. Elijah stared at the photo on the floor but didn't pick it up. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "Pick it up," Makina said. "Look at it." Elijah bent down slowly and picked up the photo. His face went pale. "That's your mother," Makina said, signing a check. "To Trina Brooks, 14 years ago." Elijah's hands started shaking. "She paid Trina $20,000 to steal my donor file," Makina continued, "to erase my name from your records, to make sure you'd never find me, never know who saved you, never owe me anything." Elijah stared at the photo, his jaw tight. "This is impossible," he whispered. "It's not," Makina said. "Trina told me everything. Your mother didn't want you tied to a poor black girl. She didn't want you feeling guilty, so she paid to make me disappear." Elijah looked up at her, his eyes hard. "Why should I believe you?" he asked. Makina felt her chest collapse. "Because it's the truth," she said desperately. "That's what you said last time," Elijah replied coldly. "And then Trina showed up with documents that proved you were lying." "I wasn't lying," Makina shouted. "I was the donor. Trina stole my identity. Your mother paid her to do it." Elijah dropped the photo on the table. "My mother wouldn't do that," he said quietly. Makina laughed once, a broken, hollow sound. "Your mother did do that," she said, "and she's been hiding it for 14 years. Elijah shook his head. "You're asking me to believe that my mother paid someone to erase you from my life based on one photo and the word of a woman who's trying to extort me?" "Yes," Makina said, "because it's true." Elijah turned away from her. "I can't do this." Makina grabbed his arm. "Elijah, please. Just ask her, confront her, see what she says." Elijah pulled his arm away. "I'm not accusing my mother of something like this based on your word." "Then you're choosing her over me," Makina said, her voice breaking. Elijah's face hardened. "I'm choosing logic over emotion." Makina felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Logic?" she whispered. "You think love is logical?" "I think truth is logical," Elijah said. "And the truth is I don't know who to believe anymore." Makina stepped back, her whole body shaking. "Then believe the facts," she said. "Test the photo. Check the bank records. Ask your mother where she was 14 years ago. Do something instead of just standing there doubting me." Elijah stared at her, his face unreadable. "And if I do that," he said slowly, "and I find out you're lying again, we're done. Forever." Makina's voice shook. "And if you find out I'm telling the truth and you didn't believe me, we're done anyway." They stood there, staring at each other, the weight of 14 years pressing down on them. Finally, Makina turned toward the door. "Where are you going?" Elijah asked. Makina stopped but didn't turn around. "Away," she said quietly, "because I can't keep loving someone who doesn't trust me. I can't keep fighting for someone who won't fight for me." She walked toward the door. "Makina," Elijah called out. She stopped again, her hand on the doorknob. "If you walk away now," Elijah said, his voice tight, "you lose me forever." Makina's chest hurt so badly she could barely breathe. She turned around one last time and looked him in the eyes. "If you don't believe me now," she said, tears streaming down her face, "I already lost you." Then she walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt like a gunshot. Elijah stood there alone in his penthouse, staring at the photo on the table. His mother's face. Trina's face. A check between them. He picked up his phone with shaking hands, dialed a number he hadn't called in months. It rang twice. Then a voice answered. "Elijah, darling." What a surprise. His mother. What will Elijah ask her? Will she tell the truth? Or will she destroy McKenna one last time? Elijah drove to his mother's house that night. He didn't call ahead, didn't warn her, just showed up at her door at 10 p.m. with the photo in his hand and rage in his chest. Victoria Rowan answered the door in a silk robe, a glass of wine in her hand, looking annoyed. "Elijah, what are you doing here at this hour?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just walked past her into the house. "Elijah," she called after him. "You can't just barge in here like—" He threw the photo on her kitchen counter. Victoria went silent. Her face changed. The color drained. Her hand tightened around the wine glass. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "So it's real," Elijah said, his voice shaking. Victoria set down her glass carefully. "Elijah, let me explain." "Explain!" he shouted. "Explain how you paid someone to erase the girl who saved my life? Explain how you stole 14 years from me?" Victoria's face hardened. "I did what I had to do." Elijah stared at her, disbelief flooding his chest. "What you had to do?" "Yes," Victoria said, lifting her chin. "You were 14, homeless, broken. That girl was 17 and just as broken. I wasn't going to let you tie yourself to poverty for the rest of your life." Elijah's hands started shaking. "She saved my life." "And I gave you a future," Victoria snapped. "I got you into that foster home in North Carolina. I paid for your education. I helped you build your company. Everything you have is because I got you away from that life." "Everything I have is because she gave me blood when I was dying," Elijah shouted. Victoria stepped closer, her voice cold. "And what would you have done if you'd known? You would have spent your whole life feeling guilty, feeling like you owed her. You would have gone back to find her, married her out of obligation, thrown away every opportunity I gave you." Elijah felt tears burning behind his eyes. "That wasn't your choice to make." "You were a child," Victoria said. "It was absolutely my choice." Elijah's voice broke. She wasn't just some girl. Her name was McKenna. And I loved her. Victoria's face twisted. "You didn't even know her." "I knew her enough to make her a promise," Elijah said. "I knew her enough to remember her for 14 years. I knew her enough to fall in love with her the second time without even realizing she was the same person." Victoria laughed bitterly. "Love? Elijah, you fell for your maid, a woman who cleaned your toilets. Do you hear yourself?" Elijah's chest collapsed. "She was never just a maid," he said quietly. "She was the only person who ever saw me when I was nothing and loved me anyway." Victoria's face went cold. "I saw you. I loved you. I saved you." "No," Elijah said, his voice breaking. "You controlled me. You manipulated me. You stole my life." Victoria stepped back, her hand pressed against her chest. "I did what any mother would do. I protected you." "From what?" Elijah demanded. "From love? From gratitude? From the truth? From poverty?" Victoria screamed. "From a life of struggling and suffering and never amounting to anything." Elijah stared at her, horrified. "You didn't want me tied to a maid," he said slowly. "That's what this was really about, wasn't it? You didn't want your son with a poor black girl." Victoria's silence said everything. Elijah felt his heart shatter. "Get out of my house," Victoria said coldly. "Gladly," Elijah replied. He turned toward the door. "Elijah," Victoria called out, her voice softer now. "Please, don't do this. Don't throw away everything we built over some girl from your past." Elijah stopped and looked back at her one last time. "You didn't build anything," he said quietly. You stole my wife. Victoria's face went white. She was never your wife, she whispered. She should have been, Elijah said, 14 years ago. And you took that from both of us. He walked out and didn't look back. He drove straight to McKenna's apartment. But when he got there, the landlord was changing the locks. Where is she? Elijah demanded. The landlord shrugged. Left this morning. Didn't say where. Elijah's chest collapsed. He pulled out his phone and called her. No answer. He texted her. No response. She was gone. Elijah finally knows the truth. But is it already too late? Elijah tracked her phone. It took him 3 hours and a call to his tech team, but he found her. A small town in Alabama, middle of nowhere. A bus that had broken down on the side of the highway. He drove all night. No sleep, no food. Just coffee and guilt and fear that he'd be too late. When he pulled into the town at sunrise, he saw her sitting outside a diner, alone, crying. Her bag on the ground beside her, her phone in her hand, her whole body shaking. Elijah parked and got out of the car. McKenna looked up. Her eyes went wide. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. Elijah walked toward her slowly, like she might run if he moved too fast. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. McKenna stood up, wiping her face. "You're sorry?" "I'm sorry," Elijah repeated. "I believed the wrong person. I doubted you when I should have trusted you. I let my mother's lies destroy us." McKenna's chest shook. "You cut her off?" "Forever," Elijah said. She admitted everything, the payment, the erasure, all of it. McKenna covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face. Elijah stepped closer. "I should have believed you from the beginning. I should have fought for you. I should have trusted what I felt instead of what I saw." "Why didn't you?" McKenna whispered. Elijah's voice broke. "Because I was scared. Scared that I didn't deserve you. Scared that everything I built was because of you and not me. Scared that if I admitted the truth, I'd lose myself." McKenna shook her head. "You never lost yourself. You just forgot where you came from." Elijah knelt in front of her right there on the sidewalk. "I don't care who saved my life anymore," he said. "I care who stood by me when I was nothing. I care who loved me when I had nothing to offer. I care who sacrificed everything and asked for nothing in return." McKenna's whole body trembled. "That's you," Elijah said, looking up at her with tears in his eyes. "It's always been you." McKenna started crying harder. Elijah stood up and pulled her into his arms. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry." McKenna buried her face in his chest and sobbed. Sobbed for the girl she used to be, sobbed for the years they lost, sobbed for the pain they both carried. "I love you," Elijah said, "not because you saved my life, but because you gave me one." McKenna pulled back and looked into his eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. Elijah cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Soft, gentle, like they were 14 and 17 again. Like they were sitting on that curb making promises they didn't know how to keep. But this time, they weren't kids. This time they knew what love cost, and they were willing to pay it. McKenna smiled through her tears. "So what now?" Elijah smiled back. "Now we go home. Together." McKenna nodded, but before she could say anything else, sirens filled the air. Loud, close, getting closer. McKenna and Elijah turned around. 3 police cars pulled into the diner parking lot. Lights flashing. Officers getting out. McKenna's heart stopped. "What's happening?" she whispered. One of the officers walked toward them, his hand on his gun. "McKenna Collins?" he called out. McKenna's chest tightened. "Yes?" "You're under arrest." McKenna's knees almost gave out. Elijah grabbed her arm. "For what?" The officer pulled out handcuffs. Fraud. Identity theft. Extortion. Makana's voice shook. I didn't do anything. Ma'am, you need to come with us, the officer said. Elijah stepped in front of her. She didn't do anything wrong. This is a mistake. Another officer stepped forward. Sir, step aside or we'll arrest you too. Makina grabbed Elijah's hand. It's okay, she whispered. No, it's not, Elijah said, his voice rising. She's innocent. Someone set her up. The officer ignored him and grabbed Makina's arm. You have the right to remain silent, he started. Makina looked at Elijah, terror in her eyes. I didn't do this, she whispered. I know, Elijah said. I'll fix this. I promise. But as they put handcuffs on her and led her toward the police car, Makina realized something. Trina had won. Who framed Makina? And how far will Trina go to destroy them both? Makina sat in the police station for 2 hours before everything changed. Elijah's lawyer arrived first, then his entire legal team, then the FBI, and then they arrested Trina Brooks. She was brought in screaming, handcuffed, makeup running down her face. This is a mistake, she shouted. I have proof. I have documents. The FBI agent ignored her and kept walking. Elijah's lawyer came into the room where Makina was sitting. You're free to go, he said. Makina looked up, confused. What? Trina Brooks fabricated everything. The lawyer explained. The fraud charges against you. The identity theft. All of it was fake. She filed false police reports to frame you. Makina's chest collapsed with relief. How did you find out? She whispered. Your hospital records, the lawyer said. We pulled the originals. Your name, your signature, your blood type. Everything matched. Trina had copies, but she altered them. Made it look like she was the donor. It was all fraud. Makina started crying. The officer removed her handcuffs. You're free to go, ma'am. We're sorry for the confusion. Makina walked out of the police station into the sunlight. Elijah was waiting outside. He ran to her and pulled her into his arms. It's over, he whispered. She's going to prison. The lawsuit's dropped. It's over. Makina sobbed into his chest. They drove back to Atlanta that night. Together, hand in hand, silent but safe. The next day Elijah called a press conference. Reporters filled the room. Cameras everywhere, lights flashing. Elijah stood at the podium, Makina beside him. I want to set the record straight, he said, his voice steady. 14 years ago, a 17-year-old girl named Makina Collins saved my life. She gave me her blood when I was dying. She sat with me when I had no one. She gave me hope when I had nothing. The room went silent. She never asked for anything in return, Elijah continued. She never wanted credit. She never wanted money. She just wanted me to live. He turned to Makina, his eyes full of tears. She owed me nothing, he said, but I owe her everything. He knelt down in front of her, right there in front of every camera in Atlanta. The room gasped. Makina Collins, Elijah said, pulling out a ring. Will you marry me? Not because I'm rich. Not because I owe you, but because I choose you. Every day. For the rest of my life. Makina's hands covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, she whispered. Yes. The room erupted in applause. Elijah stood up and kissed her. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Makina didn't hear any of it. She only heard her heartbeat, and Elijah's voice, and the promise they made 14 years ago finally coming true. But then Elijah's phone rang. He looked at the screen. His face went pale. It's the hospital, he said. Makina's chest tightened. Cairo, she whispered. They ran, drove faster than they should have, broke every traffic law, got to the hospital in 10 minutes. But when they burst through the doors, a nurse was already waiting. Her face was tight. sad. "I'm sorry," she said. "We did everything we could." McKenna's knees gave out. Elijah caught her. "No," McKenna whispered. "No, no, no." They rushed to Cairo's room. He was lying in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines. His chest wasn't moving. The heart monitor was flat. A long, steady beep. McKenna collapsed beside the bed, screaming. "Wake up!" she cried. "Please wake up!" Elijah stood behind her, his hands on her shoulders, tears streaming down his face. Doctors rushed in. "We need to call it," one of them said quietly. "No!" McKenna screamed. "Don't you dare! Try again!" The doctor looked at her with pity. "Ma'am, he's been gone for 6 minutes. There's nothing. Try again!" McKenna shouted. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. They shocked Cairo's chest once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. The monitor stayed flat. McKenna buried her face in the bed and sobbed. Have you ever finally gotten everything you wanted, only to lose the one thing that mattered most? That's the cruelest kind of pain. The kind that reminds you that joy always comes with a price. Elijah held her while she broke apart. And just when McKenna thought her world had ended completely, the monitor beeped. Once, then again, then a rhythm. Is Cairo alive? Or is this the cruelest trick fate has ever played? The heart monitor screamed once, then again, then fell into a shaky rhythm. Nurses froze. McKenna grabbed Elijah's shirt and sobbed. "Do you hear that?" The doctor shouted orders. Cairo's chest rose. If you were her, would you believe this miracle was real or just another cruel trick? They worked on him for 10 long minutes. Tubes, shocks, quiet prayers. Then a breath. Then a weak cough. Then a tiny hand squeezing McKenna's finger. Tears hit the floor. How many times does life pull you back from the edge before you stop running from joy? Cairo lived. Barely, but enough. The doctor said another minute and it would have been over. McKenna collapsed into Elijah's arms and laughed through tears. Have you ever felt that rush when fear turns into hope so fast it hurts your chest? Days passed. Machines were unplugged. Color came back to Cairo's face. He joked about hospital food. McKenna slept in a chair beside him, scared to blink. Would you let yourself rest, or would you stay awake just in case the world tried to take him again? 3 months later, there were no cameras, no crowds, just a small garden, 2 chairs, and soft music. McKenna wore a simple dress. Elijah wore a simple smile. They promised forever in quiet voices. Do you believe love is stronger when nobody else is watching? They didn't post photos. They didn't sell the story. They went home and cooked dinner like normal people. Elijah washed dishes. McKenna laughed at nothing. If this were your ending, would you trust it, or would you wait for the next storm? McKenna opened a small office downtown. No big sign, just a door and a promise. She called it Second Breath. Teens came in hungry, scared, forgotten. She fed them, listened, hugged them. Would you help a stranger if you knew one small act could change the world? On the wall was a bronze plaque. People stopped to read it. Some cried, some smiled. It said, "Founded by McKenna Collins, the woman who fed a stranger and changed the world." If your name were on that wall, what would you want it to say about you? Life felt quiet, too quiet. Cairo ran in the park. Elijah planned trips. McKenna started sleeping again, but some nights she felt watched. Ever had that feeling that peace is just a pause before something bad happens? Across the street from her office, a man stood in the shadows. He watched through the glass. He held a thick file. On the cover was her name, McKenna Collins. He smiled once, slow and cold. Who is he? And what truth is he about to unleash? Inside the file was a hospital photo from 14 years ago and a DNA report stamped in red. The man whispered, "You're not the hero they think you are." If McKenna's secret is different from what we believe, are we ready for what comes next? Everything was about to change.